We're still talking about the Japa phenomenon, and we did mention that youth are seeking to escape a landscape marred by corruption, economic stagnation, and dwindling hope. And as of now, an outstanding 60% of young Nigerians harbor dreams of forging new lives abroad. The statistics that reveals both a profound crisis and an indomitable spirit. Now, to understand the Japa phenomenon, one must delve into the social, political, and economic fabric of Nigeria. And for those who don't know, Japa is a Yoruba word that means basically to escape. And so a lot of youth are looking to escape the country because they feel like there is no more hope for Nigeria, especially looking at the recent economic crisis and, of course, the bad governance, according to them. Now, despite being Africa's largest economy, Nigeria is grappling with pervasive challenges that stifle growth and opportunity. Endemic corruption has also woven itself into the very institutions that are meant to safeguard public welfare, from the judiciary to law enforcement. And this corruption not only erodes trust, but also diverts resources away from critical sectors like education, healthcare, and of course, infrastructure. Well, joining me to have this conversation today are three profound, renowned guests. First, we have Alexander Tetteh, the Youth in Natural Resources and Environmental Governance from Accra, Ghana. We also have Dr. Unwana Samuel, a lecturer in the University of Lagos in Nigeria, and of course, Richard Effa-Kyei, a youth advocate in Ghana. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us.
You're welcome.
All right, very quickly, I'm going to start with you, Alexander, and I'm very curious to know, I mean, it's hard to even find where to begin, but the basic question here is there still hope for our country if the youth are running away? Is there still hope for our nation or our continent if the youth are running to other countries in search of greener pastures?
Yes, there's hope for the country and there's hope for Africa.
Right. And why would you think so? Because a lot of people have lost hope, especially in some of these countries, because of the kind of governance that we are experiencing. So, what is the hope here? Why do you think that there is still hope to hold on to?
Because in my organization, we are trying to build up youth to embed this hope and raise it high and very strong. So we train youth from the grassroots, from their basic education right through to university. So we are building an active youth through environmental governance and youth involvement.
Right. Thank you for that. Now, Dr. Samuel, it feels as though the youth in Nigeria or Africa in general are feeling kind of stuck because if you ask a lot of them on the street, the last resort that they have now is to jackpot, which is to run away. But even at that, it has become increasingly difficult for people to even leave the country to visit other countries or establish business relations, not to talk of migrating or relocating for a greener pasture. What does it feel like for the youths to feel stuck in a country without a means to leave? And even those who have left are villainized because it feels like they abandoned their country, according to the government.
Well, I would just start by setting the record straight. When you say Africans, I want you to just define, that word Africans, because it's not all Africans that want to leave the shores of their countries. I give you a very typical example. There are some certain Africans that are from poverty-ravaged regions that would want to escape the poverty, the insecurity, and the bad governance around their region. And there's a very tiny population of Africans who don't want to escape their foot outside of their country. I give you a very good example. Those youths in Egypt, Egypt has a very good economy. The Egyptian economy is one of the best around Africa. Although that region, the northern part of Africa, don't really see themselves as Africans. They see themselves as Arabs. That's what you call the MENA region. That's the middle belt and the northern Africa. So going back to the question that you are asking me, you would want to ask yourself, what is driving Nigerians? What is driving Ghanaians? What is driving Kenyans and the rest of the other youth from other parts of the country? From other parts of the continent, out of their countries. Very, very simple. Maybe we'll just get to that, but let me just answer your question straight. What does it feel? How does it feel for any youth in any poverty-stricken African region to find his or herself in that region and not able to get out? I tell you what, number one, that left with no opportunity, choice than to take such kind of journeys that you are seeing right now on your screen, where people, take their future, their destiny into their hands and then risking it all. And some of my colleagues in the academia will call it desperate journeys, and some of them you'll be so surprised that they're going with babies, babies that are as young as 6 months old, 3 months old. So it can be very devastating, looking at a situation where you are in a country you cannot have decent 3 square meals. In fact, in Nigeria, as you would know, there's nothing like 3 square meals again. The government has just played tricks on us. They kept the product. I'm talking about petrol, scarce for some weeks, so that we'll be hungry and looking for any point that is selling these products. In Nigeria, there's been fuel scarcity for almost 3 weeks, and people would go to buy, black market, a price at about maybe 1,200. The other day I bought 1,300 in Lagos, and when it's now available, so you are left with nothing but to just buy that, price. And a youth that has found himself in that kind of a situation where you don't know whether it's going to be better. Even the price that was about, I think 500 and something was not even better, and then she sees an opportunity to get out of the shores of his country. He would do that with every sense of happiness. I tell you, one of the reasons, that is making African youth, to leave their country, poverty. Poverty is one endemic reason, and then number two, you have it's not even corruption. I'll come to that. Then you have insecurity in a situation where I think in one of the northern states in Nigeria, where the bandits, they just went to a certain village and went to the mosque and separated the women and the children and then opened fire on the other ones and said, hey, you guys gave the military information about our whereabouts and all of that. So imagine a youth that has an opportunity to live that kind of community. He will risk it all, to get to a safer client. And the safer client that, you would say, okay, that the guy wants to get to. For example, everybody wants to get to the US, to the UK and all of that. We hear a lot of corruption cases. Yesterday, I was listening to the corruption case of the son, that's Hunter Biden, the son of the president of the United States of America and all of that. And you have these things. It might not be that high there, but you still have cases of insecurity in the Western capitals. You still have a case of corruption in some of these Western world. You hear somebody, a young child of 18, 17 or 10, 12, 15 will carry a rifle, get to the supermarket, get to the school and open, fire on people. And you ask yourself, how safe are these crimes? So poverty is driving Africans out of their shores. Opportunities, decent opportunities, enough opportunities driving Africans out of their shores. In Nigeria, you have to know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody before you can, be employed. But it's like that. It's not like that in the Western world. And then insecurity. And then if you allow me to add the fourth one, you have the issue of Medicaid. And although Medicaid is cheap in some parts of Africa, but you find out that some of these people might not even have the money to pay for medical bills. So these are the things, that are driving Africans, especially the young and old, out of their territory. And please permit me to add the fifth one, justice. In a country where somebody tells you, I'll remove my money and pay the police and pay the judiciary system to lock you up and all of that, so they find out that they will not have justice. They will not have, you know, they don't trust the justice system, and that they will not have justice in a country like that. And so they are bound to flee to other countries that the justice system is failing.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for that. I would also like to ask Richard. Richard, what impact do you think that this whole brain drain situation is having on the continent's economic and social development? And what image do you think that it's giving to us from the international eyes? Richard, are you there? Can you please confirm you can hear me, Richard? All right. While we're waiting for Richard, Dr. Samuel, I'm going to come back to you with that question about the impact that the whole brain drain is having on the country's economic and social development.
Yeah, I mean, these things are everywhere. I once did a study at the DC area, that's at Washington DC in the US, when I was doing a program there, and I found out that some of the best hands in most areas, are Africans. In fact, Nigerians. Every Nigeria, every Nigerian youth you see migrating from anywhere, whether Ogbomoso, Aba, Inewi, Calabar, Lagos, Ile-Ife, name it. And then you find out that most of them, the least degrees that they hold is a master's degree. And you get, to some of the hospitals. I was invited to some areas after to collect data, for second generation Nigerians, living in the US, and I got to find out that even some of the hospitals, you have one of the best Nigerian doctors working in those places, the nurses and all of that. You know, the economic impact is huge. Imagine these best hands, these medical doctors staying back home, to contribute their quota to the medical system. Imagine the impacts that it will create, not just the health sector, in the economy of Nigeria, because when you have the best medical doctors that are abroad coming back home to work in their countries, you find out that, number one, it will not just impact on the health sector, it will also impact on the economy, because news will spread around that there are best hands in Nigeria, and the surrounding African countries and maybe other countries would come down here for Medicaid. Why do Nigerians go to India and other parts of the country for these things? It's because, we believe that they have the best of the hands there. And then you are talking about, in terms of academics, some of the best researchers in the US are Nigerians. I can tell you that. I was listening to the first speaker talking, and you were asking him whether there is hope, for Africa in terms of this migration. I tell you the truth, I don't like being a prophet of doom. You can mark my word. As long as Africa as a continent still has tribesmen, religious leaders, and of course, career politicians, Africa will never, never be free. Africa will never be developed.
All right.
That's just the sincere truth. So, what do we have in terms of the framing of Africans on the international scene? The framing of the framing of Africa on the international scene is what you see, what you beam on your screen, where you saw the white guy, the white police rescuing maybe that baby might be a 6-month-old, as if I knew before you brought out that footage. You see, you look at the migrant boat, it's like ants, like ants eating. So when poverty wants to be painted for the world, Africa is the best region, so that they can see, that we are poor, but we are not poor. So what does this portray on the international scene? Number one, poverty. Number two, that the crime rates, or the security rate in Africa is so high that its citizens are not even staying there. So this would affect investors. This would discourage investors coming in to invest in Nigeria. Before I rest my case, while I was doing my studies in the US, because I studied Africans living in the States, hardly you come across. I mean, I go about asking questions along the street. I couldn't find a South African ask questions. Not even one. I'm not saying they are not there, but that DMV area, I couldn't find anyone. It means that their economy is okay for them to stay back home, and contribute to the GDP of their country. And then I couldn't find somebody from Rwanda, and we knew what happened in Rwanda some years back. It means that the only Rwandan I found was a faculty member that came, during, maybe the Rwandan genocide and decided to stay back. But these two nationals, South Africans, and then I couldn't find Rwandans, the people I could find from Guinea, from Ghanaians, Nigerians, Burkina Faso, those countries, those are the people I was talking to. And I found out that as long as this national, that's why they cannot, some of these countries cannot have a visa waiver, for their citizens, but countries that you have steady source of income, security, good livelihood and all of that, you find out that Western walls do a kind of a visa waiver for this country. So on the international scene, he's telling any country that cannot have a visa waiver, name one African country that has a visa waiver, maybe for Africa, by the Americans or by the UK government. You can't find one because one, these countries are framed internationally as countries that are stricken in terms of insecurity, poverty, and corruption.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Let me quickly go to Richard. I understand that he's with us now. Now, Richard, Dr. Samuel has spoken extensively about some of these issues, and I just want to know from your own perspective. I know that at this point, the offering solution might possibly be falling on deaf ears, especially in some countries. But how exactly can the government of these countries, these African countries, especially where the migration is more rampant, and I'm talking about Nigeria mostly, how can these governments and the society work together to address these issues that are driving the young people away from the country? They've deployed so many different tactics that seemingly are not working, like trying to discourage them without offering alternative solutions to a better life. So what is a solution that you can prefer? All right. While we're waiting for Richard's connection, we'll go on a very short break. And when we come back, this conversation is far from over because we still want to dive deeper into it to understand the major reason why a lot of people are migrating en masse. So stay with us. It's still Fafanwa Africa. Thanks for staying with us. It's still Fafanwa Africa, and we're still talking about a very pivotal issue that is bothering a lot of youth, and not just in Nigeria, but across the African continent. But we are spotlighting Nigeria because, of course, the recent economic situation, the hardship, and then the lack of trust in the government. We still have our guest, Dr. Unwana Samuel, a lecturer in University of Lagos, Nigeria, and we're hoping that we can also be joined by Richard very soon in the course of the conversation. But Dr. Samuel, thank you so much for staying with us. And before the break, I was trying to ask a question about possible solutions. It seems as though the cries and the agitations and anger is falling on deaf ears, especially in Nigeria. But in what way do you think that the Nigerian government and the people, especially the youths, can work together to address this issue that is driving the young people away from the country?
All right, thank you very much. You see, the solution to the woes of Nigeria or Africa as a whole, is not a rocket science. You find out that the kind of woes, the kind of challenges that Nigeria had, is a kind of challenge that some of the other African countries are having. That was why I was telling you that corruption is not really the problem of, that is driving the youth out of the shores of Nigeria or other African countries. I said a very good example, like when you get to Rwanda and you find out that you have a lot of Africans migrating from other African countries to Kigali. Man has been there. I think this is the fifth or the sixth time that Kagame has won to be the president. I don't know what you define that, and how, I mean, what's the meaning of that definition, and the citizens are not in a hurry, to leave uh to leave Rwanda. And then you get to a place like South Africa, we heard of a lot of corruption, cases with the former president, Jacob Zuma, and even the present one and all of that. But they still have one of the best economies, So coming back, to your question you were asking me, the question is, how do we stem this tide? How do we checkmate these issues that are making Nigerians and other Africans, to leave their countries en masse? Number one, make governance less attractive. When you make governance less attractive, you'll be so shocked of the number of, or the volume, or the weight of the cure that you've been able to bring, or the sanity that you've been able to bring to the society. Just take your phone and Google what is the salary of a governor, of a sitting governor of New York, of the state of New York, or the state of Maryland, or the state of Virginia. You'll be so shocked. But in Africa, when any politician wins an election and comes into power and comes into the office, in fact, their people celebrate because they know that he's going there to steal government funds, the people's fund. I won't even call it government fund. They are going there to steal, and people's fund. This is the only country that you find out that, or this is the only continent that I know that government officials go on private jets. Government officials with their children, with their wives, and the son of their, or the son of their of their relatives, the daughters of their relative. Everybody just goes on cruise. This is the only country that you find out that, that the son of or can I say, this is the only continent that you find out that the son of presidents, the sons of president, the daughters of presidents, and all of that in African countries fly with the presidential jets. When their parents are going for maybe international engagement, they also accompany them. And this is unacceptable on whose funds? And this is the only continent you find out that you have career politicians who came into the office with nothing. By the time they are leaving the office, they are so wealthy that you cannot find one investment that they had before they came into the government. So number one, make governance less attractive. Then number two, tackle the issue of insecurity. I tell you, one of the reasons that the youth are leaving this country, insecurity. While I was doing my studies in the US, at times I will ask some of them, why did you leave your country? They'll just give you one flimsy excuse. They'll tell you, even those in the western part of Nigeria will tell you that, hey, the Fulani herdsmen were coming around, to destroy our crops and all of that. That was why I left. Even those in the east will tell you, this is, even those that were living in areas, they've never even had one gunshot. They use the issue of insecurity. So if you can fix, is the government, any government that is sincere can come in and fix the issue of insecurity in this country, I tell you, from day one, things will begin to pick up. That's number two. Number three, make the environment competitive. I don't need to know anybody to get a job. I don't need to know this person, that knows this person, that knew this person and all of that to be able to compete favorably with my other colleagues. When some of these things are in place, you will find out that Nigerians, Africans will begin to stay at home and develop their quota to the development of their country. Then, medical care. Some of these countries in the Middle East, they have one of the best medical facilities that if their citizen falls sick, they take care of everything. And then make power generation available, for entrepreneurs to be able to, drive their business. We thank God that in Nigeria, that electricity is becoming a bit stable to some extent. Imagine this being tripled. Imagine those businesses that would be energized. So when these five, subheadings I've told you are taken care of, you can be sure that Nigerians, Africans will stay back home. Nigerians want to stay, and you see, let me tell you, most of the times when I go to the US, I mean, my friends will tell you, I miss this, I miss Nigeria, the phone, even despite the fact that there's hardship in the land, there's insecurity. They will tell you, I miss the phone, I miss the food, I miss the people, I miss the friendship. So when you make these things comfortable, you find out that Nigerians will stay back home and contribute, to their quota. I mean, they can contribute their quota to the development of their country.
All right. You've talked about the medical sector, and I just want to take you up on that very quickly. Now, we noticed that recently there's been so many different efforts by the government to abort the Japa mission, especially for those in the medical sector. They started off with a ludicrous, rule about you having to finish to a certain degree, and then if you don't have a particular certification, you won't be able to go. And then eventually they resorted to asking other countries not to recruit or hire Nigerians. They've done so many different things. My question is that, or was that the right way to have gone about it? Seeing as these people, I mean, many people would argue that, as a medical doctor, you swore an oath to protect lives, but not at the detriment of their own lives. So would you say that the government has gone about the whole JAPA thing the right way, or is there a better way to discourage them? This is even aside providing alternative now, because you can't ask them not to go and not have a better living condition for them in Nigeria. But do you think that all of these subtle threats and all of those publications that were put out was the right way to have gone about discouraging the medical doctors and healthcare workers from traveling?
Yeah, I think I'm a very renowned novelist in this country. Once said that the problem of Africa is that of leadership. I'm talking about late Professor Chinua Achebe, and I seem to agree with him that it's leadership. And if I want to improve on that, I think the problem of Nigeria, not just other African countries, not just about leadership, is just the willpower, the political power, to drive that leadership. Talking about the medical sector, it will take a leader that understands the importance of life, to reform this sector, not just coming from the background of subtle, subtle threats, as you rightly put it, to deter these guys from looking for greener pastures abroad. The other day, the Nigerians were asking how much is the salary or the take-home pay of a senator. This is a chap, I'm talking about like the medical doctors, he spends about 7 years, 6-7 years, the university reading medicine. And after that, he's required to do house job for 1 year. And after the house job, that's housemanship, he goes for NYC another 1 year, and then comes back to the area of his specialization, maybe residency training, some 5 years, some 4 years. And you are looking at about 10 to 12 years of his life, and putting it in this career. And by the time you come back, they come back, they find out that the pay they get is not really, at par with what obtains with their colleagues outside of Nigeria. And I want to believe that any sensible medical doctor that has the opportunity, some of them have started writing, USMLE, like the Canadian Medical Council exams and all of that, so that they can be able to practice in these countries, that they pay them well. So it boils down, it goes back to what I told you about the problem of leadership and the willpower to do that, which is right, to set the country right. Why would a senator earn better than a medical doctor? Why would a senator earn better than a lecturer? Why would a senator earn better than a nurse? Why would a senator earn better than a teacher? And there are a lot of other careers like that, because they have made governance very attractive for themselves because of the jumbo pay. That's why they kill. That's why they do all manners of things to get into, into the position of authority. I'm talking about political authority, because they know that if you can get into the position of authority, political authority, it means more money. Some it might even be uncounted, unaccounted for money for them, and some of them that the EFCC are even after them, the cases are dragging forever. So there is no country that progresses, when you have career politicians. Right, like I will always tell my students when I want to emphasize something I know that I'm going to bring out in exams, I say, write it down, note it. So you note it. There's no, as long as Africa, as long as Nigeria, still have career politicians. You know what I'm calling career politicians? They're not buying soap, they're not buying paper to sell, to take profit and all of that. What they do is politics, politicking. There's no way Africa or Nigeria would develop, let alone them making laws or enacting laws or making decision policies that would even benefit, medical doctors or the medical sector as a whole. There's no way.
All right, Dr. Samuel, thank you so much. And I really do like the passion with which you're speaking. I hear that we have Richard with us, so I'm going to try it once again. Richard Effa-Kyei, youth advocate in Ghana. Richard, can you confirm that you can hear us now? Richard, are you with us? Could you please unmute
I can hear you. Good afternoon.
Okay, great. I'm glad that you were able to join us. Now, Richard, I would like to very quickly ask you to speak to the popular saying that power is not given, it is taking, especially considering some of the bottlenecks and challenges that we experience. It's easy to say, oh, you to go out there, take what belongs to you, ask for your rights, demand this from the government, demand that, and just stand your ground. But there's a lot of gray areas, because it's not as easy as it sounds, when there's a government that do not give you listening ears, or they make you feel like they understand your plight, but then they make the situations even worse. They do not prioritize you as youth. It feels like a lot of gaslighting going on. So how would you relate that saying, power is not given, it's taking, to the current situation in Africa, where there's a lot of power play, and it's like the youth are the grasses that suffer when the elephants in power are fighting?
Well, really insightful question. Good afternoon again to everyone. This statement of power is not given but taken is unfortunately true, especially because when we have this bottlenecking, we have the red taping, and we have so many barriers that are set to stop the youth from taking various positions. So we can take a case in point. In the case of Burkina Faso, the soldier who took over power is just around 36 years or so. In a normal African democracy, such a person will not be allowed to lead a nation. Whereas we have an example of France, which had Emmanuel Macron becoming president in, I think, 39 years. This is something that never would have happened in Africa, right? So it compels one to do whatever it takes, or, when issues come, there are two responses, basically. It's either you fight or you flee. So there's a fight or flight approach. So it's either you fight it, you fight the systemic corruption, you fight the systemic barriers that are put there to undermine your ability just because of age, where instead of quality, we are looking at quantity, we are looking at background and who knows you and who recommended you, as opposed to what can you do. At the same time, we are looking at flight. Flight is the immigration thing we are talking about, where we look at, okay, there is no hope for me, there's no hope for my family, and I do not want to undergo what my parents may have undergone, or my grandparents, or my aunties. So I would rather move out because I feel I have the skills, to make things happen. So it's a complex situation that pushes the youth to make decisions that may be untoward, because in the end, you have to make ends meet, you have to live. So we can talk about in Ghana, there's an issue of galamsey, which is the illegal mining. And normally we have large scale miners, we have small scale miners, and then we have the illegal mining firms. And these ones, they go without license, they operate close to water bodies, and they actually destroy water bodies because they use chemicals and it's not really licensed. This is something that shouldn't be happening, but because of some corruption or economic problems, it's allowed to fester. So the youth would rather not go to school because they do not feel even the need to go to school. Imagine someone being 6 years old or 10 years old, and the elder brother has gone to the university and has returned and has no job, even though he's duly qualified. This child sees no reason to even go to school. So a community we went in, children in JHS, junior secondary school level, that's somewhere around 12 years, 13 years, they would go for this galamsey because they felt no need going to school because to them, school is a scam because they could not see the direct link between the sweat and the returns that people could have. Right. So it's a very, very complex thing that makes it really difficult. We can talk about the case of, internet fraud. We can talk about all ways to kidnap and to fraud people. It gives no credence. It should not be happening, but it is an unfortunate offshoot of the systemic bottlenecking that is going on. So it's a complex situation that really needs to be tackled because we cannot live beside vices in the society. Galamsey affects water bodies, fraud and all those kidnapping are really bad for the society. People are dying, people are getting sick, and we cannot have this happening in the next 10, 15 years. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Richard. Let me quickly come back to you, Dr. Samuel. Now, there are speculations that the youths are actually exhausted, and it's understandably so because if you're in a country, we've seen countries in Africa where the youth will clamor for a thing and then the government will listen to them. It's a different ball game than being in a country where you're screaming at the top of your lungs and nothing is being done. It doesn't look like the government hears what you're saying. It only will get to a point where you just become complacent and you just go with the flow. They've tagged us, especially in Nigeria, as the youth who know how to adapt. That even when we are pushed to the wall, we break the wall and just keep going back because we do not have the fighting power in us anymore. Do you think that it's true that the youth are tired and as a result have given up because they've not seen any result after all the protest and cry and clamor and everything?
Yeah, the truth remains that Nigerians, especially the Nigerian youth, have the greatest shock absorber in the world. And most of the hardship that you see ongoing in the land right now, it doesn't even get to these in some other parts of the country. And you see some form of reorganization, some form of youth restiveness and all of that. But you see, any right-thinking person shouldn't think of taking laws into his hand, going on the street to vandalize things in the name because I'm hungry and all of that. Wait, when there's election, you do the right thing, and in your country, in Africa, if you feel that there's something wrong, with the government system, so what you need to do is wait. When there's a time for election, then you do the needful. But the truth remains, looking at the Nigerian situation, a lot had happened even before this time, even before this administration. There was even rot going back to the time of Jonathan. That's just the sincere truth. We have to tell ourselves the truth. We heard of the Dasuki debt, money was stolen and things like that. And that was why, Nigerian youth, for the first time, I say, hey, we are for the very first time, an incumbent government, would be dislodged. And they would say, we are tired of this situation. And we want a change. We want something different. And then we had Buhari came in, and a lot of people were disappointed and all of that. And people were plunged into poverty and all of that. And people were even clamoring and say, hey, take us back to the days of Jonathan, and then Buhari came in and people were just coping. And then this new government is coming in right now or has just come in to say, hey, give me time I want to undo some of the things that were done, some of the bad economic policies and all of that that took place during, maybe from the other previous administration down to him. So if you ask me, are Nigerians tired? Nigerians are tired of hearing stories and stories. The present administration might have, might have a good policy on ground to say, hey, this is what we have to do, but manage with us, endure with us. But because of the history of suffering that these guys, I'm talking about Nigerians, have gone through, quite a number of years, they might not want to listen anymore. I tell you the truth, in the last couple of weeks, Nigerians were sleeping, at filling stations looking for people. It was that bad, so this might not allow Nigerians, to even think straight to say, okay, in the coming days, things are going to get better. Some critics will tell you that it wouldn't take up to a year for things to for things to be better, and so we cannot wait anymore. So I think Nigerians are not just tired, have been driven, backward, have been pushed into poverty. In fact, I told a radio station that came to interview me, I said, let me tell you the truth. The mere news that the fuel price per liter was moved from around 500 something naira to about 800, call it just running up to 900, that news alone would plunge some Nigerians into abject poverty. So are Nigerians tired? They are not just only tired. Nigerians are fed up. They want to see results. Even the law enforcement guys, because they don't have different markets, are also tired. Even some of them that are politicians that have people, that push for them to be there, that have relatives, I want to believe by now they're also tired of sending money, urgent 2K, urgent 5K, and all of that. Even some of us that don't have access to government funds, we know people who have bombarded our inboxes looking for help, genuine help. I'm not talking about scammers now. So you find out that Nigerians have been overwhelmed with the economic reality. So Nigerians are tired. I did say when I started this conversation, this particular question, that Nigerians have the greatest shock absorber in the world, because in some other clients, in some other countries, I can't tell what will happen, but I pray that things get better in the coming days.
Mm. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Samuel. Now, my final question, Richard, if you were to prefer a solution, something that would be that would cause a tangible difference in the next 2, 3, 5 years for the African continent with regards to youths and massive migration, what would that solution be? Very quickly.
I would prefer that the system changes. I would prefer that governance opens up. I would prefer that corruption is tackled from the roots, without that people have made up their minds that they are going out to settle and come back to probably help the nation, right? So for me, I would suggest that people just do what you can, save your family and help the society, but do not die in trying to help the society. It is really unfortunate that we've got into this stage in decision making. If you look at Ghana, for example, last year, the entire year, we had 62,000 people applying for Canadian visa. But this year alone, between January to April, 63,000 people applied for the Canadian visa, right? So I would only say that help yourself if you can, help the society when you can, but save yourself first. That's all I can say. Do the best you can, speak out when you need to, but save yourself first. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. I want to take this opportunity to say a big thank you to Dr. Unwana Samuel, a lecturer in the University of Lagos, Nigeria, and of course, youth advocate Richard Effa-Kyei, all the way from Ghana. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts. And I'm going to borrow the words of Richard. I hope that in the next 5 years, the continent will be better for it if actions are taken. That is. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
My pleasure. It's been a very insightful conversation here on Fafanwa Africa, and this is what we do every week, where we talk about the issues that concern the youths, especially across the African continent. And of course, we try to propose a solution to a lot of their challenges. Thank you so much for watching. See you again on our next episode as we discuss on Fafanwa Africa. Thank you so much.